Indian missions and envoys have always been at the forefront of helping Indian community overseas. In Italy, where the pandemic has created havoc, the Indian embassy is working tirelessly to help stranded Indians. Now, WION spoke exclusively to Ambassador Rinath Sandhu, who currently heads the Indian mission in Rome. Italy is one of the worst affected countries with high mortality rates. Since the 11th of March, the entire country is under a lockdown. Ever since the virus hit Italy, the Indian embassy has been constantly in touch with various groups of Indian communities in Italy. The Indian mission in Rome has also started collecting data to send targeted messages to people. They are also taking the help of local community groups and NGOs to assist Indians in distress. Free food is also being provided by gurudwaras and Indian restaurants in Italy. The Italian government has introduced a lockdown but is ensuring that essential services remain open. During this time of global crisis, India is also working closely with the Italian government authorities who have promised full cooperation and support.
Help us with where we are right now. You know, we've been talking about whether a bottom's in, whether there's any kind of stability that we're starting to see. Do you see it or not?
So I've been pushing back, Andrew, against this notion that we had established the bottom. Do you remember I called it a counter-trend rally? Yep. That we were still on a downward trend. And I think we are. And the fact is, Andrew, most people haven't priced in the uncertainty surrounding, first, the duration and severity of the shock. Second, how long it will take to get the money that's being pushed out by policies into the hands of businesses. Third, how tricky the restart is. And finally, the post-crisis landscape. So until we price that in, unfortunately, it's still more of a downside for markets from here.
And in terms of pricing that in, though, in terms of just walk us through the permutations with which you think it will get priced in and when? Meaning,
so it's
what
going to be sequentially.
I think investors are still either looking for or they clearly, in your mind, must be missing at this point?
No, look, we haven't seen this sort of shock before. We've never seen a sudden stop to the global economy. So cognitively, it's taking us time to appreciate. So, for example, a lot of people went into automatic rebalancing, not realizing that it is different this time around. And that's the favorable technical that we've had, and that's running out right now. So it's a cognitive issue. It's going to take time. We're getting there. Very few people are talking about V's now. There's a recognition it's more of a U. And we're just going to get there sequentially. We're going to understand that there is massive uncertainty about the duration and severity of the shock. And there is delay in getting money into the hands of people, which means, unfortunately, and I stress, this is really unfortunate, liquidity problems are going to become solvency issues for some businesses. And that's a real concern.
So for those investors out there who are watching us this morning, who have cash on the sidelines, who are waiting, thinking that there's a bottom, or they're trying to pick the bottom, which is almost an impossible task to begin with, what are you telling them they should be doing?
So I say you're not going to be able to pick the bottom. Whatever cash you have, divided over 5 installments, so the notion of averaging into the market, and make sure, if you really want to go in at this point, I wouldn't, but if you really want to go in at this point, do a fifth now, a fifth next month. I know it's not very sophisticated, but no one can tell you for sure how these dynamics are going to evolve. We simply have not seen this before.
Hey, Mohammed, can we go back to that point you were just making, the idea that this is going to become a liquidity issue for a lot of companies that are out there? I don't think we've spent enough time on this, and I think that's kind of like the ugly undercurrent that's rolling through all of this. We may have seen this initial drop-off and this initial sell. If we can get back to normal quickly, maybe some of these businesses are okay. But I think there are a lot of companies that have taken on debt, a lot of things that have happened. And with this sudden stoppage, it changes the picture for everything.
You're absolutely right, Becky. So there's 2 groups of company, broadly speaking. There are those that have access to debt, and they are taking on a ton of debt. We've had record investment-grade issuance. We've even had some high-yield issuance. And they are building a ton of cash buffers, which they should, But when they come out, their earning power is going to be less. So their credit worthiness is going to be weaker. And on the other side, you have companies who unfortunately do not have access to loans or to debt issuance. And for them, a liquidity problem will become a solvency issue, which means a reversible shock will become a permanent capital impairment shock. So wherever you look, we're going to have to price in a different post-crisis landscape. And that's one of the four things that as yet markets haven't got their arms around. They will, but unfortunately it means lower valuations from here.
Hey, Mohammed, can you just walk us through your own timeline that you're using in your head to think about this crisis? Because, we've asked basically all of our guests what their timeline is. And I would say right now a consensus timeline that you keep hearing is sort of a mid-May or even early June, that there's some return. I don't even know what that return looks like. Some people think that may be the consensus right now. I know some people think that's aggressive. I know other people who think that's not optimistic.
So I get a sense that the timeline is even shorter in most people's mind, and that's what's priced in. And there's this notion that we can be date specific. At this point, we're going to turn the switch back on. And unfortunately, that's not how it works. First, we don't know where that date is. And secondly, it's not just a matter of turning the switch on. This is a very complicated restart that people haven't really thought about yet. I don't have a time, and I would encourage investors not to have a time. What I would encourage investors to do is first have the resilience for the journey. Make sure you can stick through this journey, which is going to be volatile. Second, have a few things that you're looking at to tell you when it is you're getting closer to the definition of a timeline. And third, have the agility to move when you see it. Don't get hooked on a particular timeline. Rather get hooked on these three processes. And that's how you're going to navigate a really difficult journey, but the destination will be better for markets.
Given your concern about credit and liquidity turning into a solvency issue, for those investors who may own certain sectors or certain stocks, is there a certain screen that you would put on the market right now for those investors who are saying I should get out of certain things still at this point, based on what you're saying?
So the trade is, and you've heard me say this for the last 2 weeks, up in quality, and you're still having an opportunity to go up in quality. So what does that mean? If you own a company that has any of these characteristics, you should go up in quality. One, if it has no cash reserves or insignificant cash reserves. Two, if it's very negative cash flow. And third, if it has a lot of debt falling due. If you own a company right now, you are betting not just on a bailout, you are betting on a bailout that's not going to undermine the capital structure. And I think that most of these bailouts are going to come with conditions. So be very careful if you're trafficking in low quality companies, whether you're doing this in high yield bonds, triple Cs, double Cs, or whether you're doing it in certain stocks.
And while we're busting fake news, how can we leave out what's coming out of China? The virus is still spreading, and China is already rewriting the history of this pandemic, a full book no less. Beijing is busy projecting itself as the world's savior. Chinese diplomats are spreading disinformation, and Chinese bots online are building an alternative reality about this outbreak. Our next report tells you all about China's propaganda playbook.
The coronavirus outbreak in Italy is one of the worst in the world. There are more than 1 lakh patients. The number of deaths is mounting. On Wednesday, that figure crossed 12,000. More people have died in Italy than in any other country in the world. The Italian government is helpless before this pandemic. Rome has turned to Beijing for help. China has showered Italy with aid and is making a big show of it. The Chinese embassy in Rome posted this in March. It declares China's contribution to the fight in Italy. The photograph catches your attention. The big relief package and a team of doctors. What should also catch your attention is this. It means, go China, go Italy. The Chinese embassy in Italy introduced it, and China-sponsored bots amplified it. A report analyzed the posts mentioning the same hashtag. It found that nearly half of these tweets were published by bots. More than 1/3 of the posts with the hashtag Grazie China or Thank You China were shared by bots. A Twitter army is amplifying China's agenda on social media. It's one of the many tricks in Beijing's propaganda playbook. China is trying to change the narrative, to deflect blame for spreading the coronavirus. Beijing is donating generously to the worst affected countries. It's another matter that the donations may be substandard. Stories around aid packages are being amplified by the state media and Chinese diplomats. The crisis is far from over, but China has already written a book about it. It's called A Battle Against the Epidemic. A description on the People's Daily says the book is compiled to show the strength of the Communist Party of China. The Chinese government plans to publish this book in multiple languages. It's an attempt to rewrite the history of the outbreak. China has launched a massive operation. It is rewriting the story about the origin of the virus, not just to shift the blame, but to make itself the hero of the fight against the pandemic. And every hero needs a villain. Chinese diplomats are cooking up conspiracy theories. They're blaming the outbreak on the West. A spokesperson of the foreign ministry made this claim. He said, the US Army made the coronavirus. The Chinese state media was happy to magnify this claim. But leaders around the world are calling out China. They are busting the conspiracy theories. Fake Chinese supplies are being rejected. China's global information warfare is facing a pushback. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
A technocracy is defined as a society that is controlled by bureaucrats, experts, scientists, engineers, technocrats. And the ability of that situation to happen is through smart technology and AI. The idea is that everything will be connected to AI. This is what the Internet of Things is all about. And if you listen to the crazies in Silicon Valley, they're telling you that in the period around 2030, a year that keeps coming up from all directions, we will have a situation where the human brain will start to be connected to AI. And thus, whoever controls AI will be connecting and driving the perceptions of humanity. And that can be done from a central point through this smart grid, global smart grid. There are two major techniques that are being used to bring about that situation. One, I've called since the 1990s problem, reaction, solution, where you covertly create a problem, you use the unquestioning, pathetic mainstream media to tell the public the version of the problem you want them to believe. And you're looking at stage two, the reaction, for fear, that's the currency of control, outrage, whatever the problem is, and either a demand from the public that something must be done, or at least an acceptance from the public that things need to change because of the problem. And at that point, those who've created the problem got that reaction openly in changes in society, offer the solutions to the problems they have themselves covertly created. And those changes, step by step, take us further and further to that Hunger Games society. There's another version, which I call no problem reaction solution, where you don't need a real problem, you just need the perception of one, weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and you still have the ability to provide your society-changing solution. The stable mate of problem reaction solution is what I call the totalitarian tiptoe, where you start at A and you know you're going to Z, but you know if you go in too big a leap, people will look up from the game show and the latest Simon Cowell and say, what's going on, because the change is so great. So you do it in as big a steps as you can towards your outcome, but not so fast or big that you alert too many people to the fact that it's a pattern. What you want people to believe is everything is random. Coronavirus, random. Climate change, random. Economic crash, random. But when you know where we're being taken, you know the outcome, this Hunger Games structure society, now the apparently random events become clear stepping stones to that outcome. Now, let's take all of that and apply it to the coronavirus and what's happening now, and let people decide for themselves if they think that the fact that the coronavirus hysteria ticks every single box of that outcome, that goal, whether that's a coincidence. One of the things I've been pointing out as a problem reaction solution that was coming to transform human society, including, by the way, one of the things I said was coming in my earlier books was a pandemic, because of all the boxes it ticks. But what I've been saying for the best part of 30 years is they are planning an enormous economic crash. And I've been saying it even more since 2008, because 2008 seemed to be a nightmare. And so this coronavirus hysteria gives the excuse to do what they're doing, and the outcome and the consequences of what they're doing is to dismantle the world economic system. Now, what this coronavirus hysteria is creating is a situation unfolding by the hour worldwide that is destroying small business, family business, even medium-sized business, some even relatively big businesses too. It's destroying them. The big legacy of what is happening now will not be to do with health long term, it will be economic. What happens to those people whose businesses collapse? What happens to all those people who were working for those businesses? For bars, for hotels, for all these businesses that have been targeted, don't go there, shut down. What happens to them? They fall into the bottom of the Hunger Games society. And what we're seeing now, every day, is this Hunger Games society coming closer and closer and closer because of what's being done in the name of protecting the people. What was it this guy Tedros, the head of the World Health Organization, he said, don't touch cash. Use cards because the virus can pass on through cash. I've come up here today for this chat 3 times in places that are always cash. I had cash turned down, now we're taking cards. And when this runs on, they're going to be justifying a cashless society on the basis of that you can pass viruses on through it. They're going to be saying, we can't have this again. We can't have this happen again. So you're going to have more technological testing of people for whether they have a temperature and all this stuff, and the whole surveillance is going to move on, exactly as it has in China.
Right.
If people thought China had reached the point of beyond Orwellian, well, you just look what they've brought in as a result of this coronavirus.
So you walk into a restaurant after you've ordered your food, and a camera picks you up and he says, David, welcome, here's your food, right? So you're starting to get the feel of what a 5G world is. And what is a 5G world? The platform is the network. So this is mobile computing paired with a pipe. 5G is computing and networking combined on the same platform. So this goes away. You walk outside your door and you say Uber. You don't get on your phone and say, I want an Uber. You just say Uber. Camera picks up your face or a microphone picks up you.
Come on.
That's what 5G is. That's what 5G is. And then the Uber shows up. There's a camera on the car that sees you, knows who you are, don't have to ask you your name. You get in and you go to wherever you want. You get out and you go do whatever you want. So in this world, in the 4G world, this is a platform. It's yours, right? You don't want to be part of that, all of that data. Remember we just talked about how do you influence society? You don't want all that data to be out there about what you're doing. Just don't carry one of these, right? Just opt out. In a 5G world, you cannot opt out. Who owns the data? This, you could conceivably say, you lease the data on here you own. If you're getting Google services, you don't own that data. But in the 5G world, not only can you not opt out because it's built around the city, it's not in your phone anymore. Not only can you not opt out, you don't know who owns the data. Everything that you do can be watched. 2 people for every camera in China by 2022.
They have 1 billion right now on surveillance.
Right,
1 billion
right.
cameras in China right
with
now.
With artificial intelligence for facial recognition, right? So all of this is getting built right now in China. And who's helping them do it? Microsoft, Google, right? All of these companies that want to deploy this world into our country. So Baidu, Alibaba, and Tencent, that's where the world goes. It goes from 2007, AT&T, GE, and Microsoft to the FANGs to the BATs, right? Who owns the pipes? Me as a B2 guy, the first thing I look at in the country is where's telecommunications? You've got to take that out, number one. But if rather instead of taking it out, you own or control it, so Huawei builds the pipes, then because you're behind the Great Firewall, you built the app services and business models of the 5G world. And you're, like I said, you're already starting to see that. You know, where your facial recognition is built into your interaction when you go into a restaurant, or when you go into a store, when you go into a bank. You know, everything's about, you know, the device is connected. Then as you build the network, then those proliferate. So 4G network, 10,000 devices per square mile. 5G network, 3 million devices per square mile. You're not going to carry 12 smartphones. You may not even carry a smartphone because
10,000 to 3 million?
10,000 to 3 million. That's what 5G does. The connectivity explodes, right? So that allows you to put devices literally everywhere that can make your life more convenient or can track you.